The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.
You might not realize it driving down the road, but agriculture takes up a huge amount of our landscapes. Stand back, let's go take a look. These aerial views begin to show you just how much of our lands are used to raise crops. But that's just part of the story that impacts our landscapes and your life. Check this out. See that green water down there? Any guesses what that means? Lakes and rivers don't pollute themselves. Algae blooms or grows like crazy when nutrients from livestock manure or commercial fertilizers get washed from fields into our surface waters. So how big of a problem is this? How does it really affect your life? And what can be done about it? Let's find out as we explore how water quality issues affect people all across the Midwest, using our eye in the sky to find sustainable waters, lands, and lives as we head into the outdoors.
Into the outdoors. Grab your gear and let's explore as we discover the wild outdoors. Science, discovery is what we do. Into the outdoors. Now what you waiting for? Into the outdoors. It's fun when we explore. Science, discovery is way too cool. You can make our earth a brighter, better place by joining us in this wide open space. Into the outdoors.
Maybe you're asking yourself, why should I care if some farm out there is sustainable or not? I don't live there. Maybe you should be asking yourself, why would sustainability on a landscape matter to anyone?
As human technology has increased and the human population has increased, the impact on natural systems has increased.
We are of the natural world. We exist within a priory of species, within the web of life. And if we have things collapse around us, we are going to be hurt by that.
We are at, many would argue, a tipping point. We're at the limits of some of our environmental resources in terms of good air, water, soil quality, and the way we've been degrading what's going to allow us to continue to survive. Sustainability is incredibly important to direct human health impacts on our current health, our future health, our next generation's health. And ultimately, if you don't have health, you don't have much of anything else.
So here's something for you to think about. You know, the food that you choose to buy today and eat today, you know, will become the cells of your body tomorrow.
They did a study that looked at newborns, and they did cord blood, which, you know, the first blood that comes out of the umbilical cord. And somewhere around 400 chemicals were in an infant right at the time of birth. That meant they were chemicals that came through the placenta from the mother. They did a great study on kids where they looked at pesticide residue in the urine. And all the kids' pesticide levels in their urine dropped when they were eating organic fruits and vegetables.
We have 40 known essential vitamins and minerals that we have to get from the food. We've identified over 8,000 phytochemicals that exist in the fruits and vegetables. One of the best ways we can describe phytochemicals is they give the color to all the fruits and vegetables you eat. Phyto means plant, chemical means something a plant synthesizes, and plants synthesize all sorts of substances to help that plant. And when we eat those fruits and vegetables and we consume those phytochemicals, they have numerous health benefits. If livestock are eating the grasses, they're going to also accumulate some of those phytochemicals in then the meat products and the milk and the egg products we eat from them, and that's a good thing. But then the other big thing for livestock, organically or sustainably grass-grazed versus conventionally grain-fed, is the fat profile. For a long time, many of us thought of fat as just as one thing and one bad thing. And in fact, fat is not one thing. There's several types of fats. So there's omega-3 and omega-6. Our ancestors consumed anywhere from about a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, or maybe a 4-to-1 for most of human history. So if you look at the American ratio now, instead of 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 10-to-1 to 20, 30-to-1. And that appears to be a problem in terms of human health. And grasses contain relatively more equal amounts of omega-6 and omega-3. Long story short, getting more omega-3 in our diet, bringing omega-6 down, is clearly advantageous in terms of lowering our risk to heart disease. All of that is also causing a shift towards sustainable farming practices.
Are you ready for some serious research? Okay, I'll fly some aerials while you go join the scientists on the research vessel Niske. See if you can help them decode the mystery of what's creating the dead zone in Green Bay.
It's just a fact that the way we grow food now has a very heavy footprint on our lakes, streams, and groundwater. That was not the case 60 or 75 years ago because we didn't have the technology, the industrialized fertilizer, the food additives for crops. We didn't even have the capability to have a concentrated animal feeding unit. And now we do, and so we have connected water to agriculture in a new way that is leading to a tremendous amount of damage to our water resources. And Green Bay is a somewhat confined region of Lake Michigan. As those nutrients come out of the Fox estuary, they don't mix into the lake, they don't get diluted right away. Green Bay is definitely a pocket that's susceptible to pollution.
So the sources of phosphorus are either fertilizers or manures primarily. There is some natural phosphorus, but again, most of it's coming from manure and fertilizers. And when we have high phosphorus in the soil, it's vulnerable to loss. Phosphorus tends to stay connected to the soil particles in the organic matter the most, not real soluble, but when we have excess in the soil, or when we lose that soil from the landscape through erosion, then the phosphorus gets into the water. We know that much of what runs off the landscape happens in just a relatively few days a year when we have larger rainstorms. And that's also when most of the phosphorus or products that come from animal waste or from other fertilizers and from soil get off the landscape and get into the water.
What's going on in the bottom in Green Bay is really important, especially when it comes to dissolved oxygen. You may have heard about the hypoxic zone, or what they call the dead zone. It's an area, the bottom water, which has very low and sometimes zero dissolved oxygen, and so that's tough on organisms. And so that's a problem in Green Bay. It's a problem in Lake Erie. It's a problem in the Gulf of Mexico. There are probably hundreds of hypoxic zones around the world, all driven pretty much by the same problem, and that is, excessive nutrient loading or phosphorus and nitrogen coming in from the landscape.
And the reason that's important is because while there's a lot of oxygen in the atmosphere, there isn't much in the water, so there's much less of it available for breathing, for life underwater. The main issue is the supply of nutrients, and that phosphorus feeds a lot of algal growth and phytoplankton growth in the bay. When all those algae and phytoplankton die, the bacteria that degrade that new fresh organic matter, they breathe in oxygen and breathe out CO2. And what that means then is that there's just less oxygen available for the life that needs it. This is a non-nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. The toxin that it produces a microcystin. It's a liver toxin, which makes water undrinkable, unpalatable. The citizens of Green Bay haven't gotten their water from Green Bay for a long time, so it's not directly a drinking water issue for the citizens of Green Bay, but it's still a water quality problem.
One of the problems I think we face here is people take water for granted. These lakes are simply a reflection of what happens on the land. For all intents and purposes, anything you throw, toss, leak, or let get into the system, if it goes in today, there's a good chance you will drink it tomorrow, or if not tomorrow, sometime in the future. Because right now, the environment subsidizes most of our activities. We do not pay for dumping stuff in the lake. We use that as a repository for our waste, and that's not right. We can't continue to do that. It's not a sustainable activity. You know, somebody said the future has no constituency, and that is so true. Your great-great-grandchildren can't come back to you and say, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? They don't have a voice today. It is totally up to us.
It took us 3 years in Green Bay working with scientists and people who had studied water to actually answer the question, could we clean it up? And then we had to figure out, well, how do we get people to do that? And that's the challenge. We're into now a couple decades of effort to try to see if people can make the changes that are required. We know what those changes are. The challenge will be, can we get everybody to collaborate again to do those changes?
You might be thinking, well, it's a good thing those Green Bay residents and the Packers get all their drinking water from Lake Michigan, way up north by Kewanee, right? As you're about to discover next, the landscape is seriously impacting what's happening to the lake water there. You know there are two main sources of drinking water, right? Oh, come on, don't say your tap. For most of us, we get our water from places like Lake Michigan, or from underground, called groundwater. Any guesses what one activity on the landscape can significantly impact not one, but both of those water sources? Let's hit the beach and find out.
When you think about how many quadrillion gallons there are in the Great Lakes Basin and in the Bay of Green Bay, to be able to put enough nutrients in that water to cause what is happening here means we're putting in a very substantial amount. What's happening in this lake will impact everyone in Wisconsin, most certainly.
The growth in the size of dairy farms is a phenomenon that's occurring all over the world. CAFO is a farm that has more than 1,000 animal units, which works out to be about 750 milking cows.
My grandfather milked about 45 cows. My dad milked around about 170 cows. The old saying years ago was, you never had more cows than what your wife could milk. That's no longer true today. We have decided to do more a little bit of on the volume side, which some people think is good and some people don't think is good. And we've taken it to about 3,500 cows and about 3,500 heifers.
We had 0 cows and we went to 4,000. And it's because if you try and grow, you always hit these walls where, oh, I did that wrong now, I did that wrong. Where there we optimize everything so it's efficient.
In Wisconsin, the result has been, one could argue, more dairy cows in particular parts of the state than that ecosystem can accommodate. So when you have large animal operations, that risk of those nutrients being recycled, recirculated through the environment is just a bigger risk. It's not to say that it can't be done, but it takes technology, it takes planning.
Why do I think large animal operations are so much in the spotlight right now? I think they're an easy target because people don't understand how they operate. Because they don't understand it, they fear it a little bit. They're large, people are a little fearful of large. So we have 8,000 cows, so maybe some people really view that we need to stay like we were in the past with small operations, and there's a place for that, but there's a place for large ones too, I believe.
Sustainability versus domination. A CAFO is a form of domination, economically, socially, and environmentally. But people view that as a metric of success. And so if you're thinking within that system, like if I can get this many cows in one space, that will be success, you're at odds with other systems.
And increasingly, the legal system is taking notice.
Especially the Wisconsin Supreme Court at the end of 2015 issued a ruling that indicates manure will be considered a pollutant if it contaminates a neighboring well.
Each cow produces about as much waste as 18 humans, and if you have 1,000 or 5,000 cows in one spot, you can think that's a lot of animal waste that needs to be dealt with. We don't have the infrastructure at our farms like we do in our communities to treat that waste. And often it's easiest to spread that manure near the place where it's generated. So quite frankly, I think there's sort of a carrying capacity issue. Do we have enough land for the amount of manure that's generated, particularly in this watershed that leads to Green Bay?
So how do we handle our organic matter, or manure as we would call it? First of all, it all gets collected and goes through a digester, anaerobic digesters in both dairies. So we make electricity with it. Then we separate the fiber from it. We'll dry that fiber for bedding for our cows. And then that liquid portion we store. We have about 13 months storage, so we don't have to do any winter application, and we do a lot of summer application. We really try to put 75% of our nutrients on the plants while they're growing, rather than fall or spring, because that's when the roots are there to grab the nutrients. That's where the roots are there to hold soil from running off.
An adult cow will produce about 30 gallons per day of a product that we call our organic manure. Their manure that then gets mixed with the water, getting it into more of a liquid fashion, which makes it easier for us to handle it at a larger volume. Between all of our sites, we produce about 40 million gallons of product, of the liquid product.
And doesn't it just blow you away? We're mixing clean, potable water with manure in a place, a global awareness of water and how valuable it is, and yet we must either have an arrogance about it, or there must be such a glut of it, which we do know we have here in this northeastern region of the state, that it is actually abused.
Now you're probably saying, what can I do about that problem? Believe it or not, plenty. Especially if all of us get a little more sustainable. Coming up next, find out how everyone can be more sustainable and help the planet by going and growing green. So how can you be more sustainable on the landscape while also creating biodiversity? Roll up your sleeves as we dig for some answers at Green Bay Botanical Garden.
Oh boy, we really need your help on this. Do you know what's missing here? Obviously, there's no biodiversity here.
We've got lots going on over here.
Hey, this isn't fair. You look like you're in a jungle. What's all that noise?
That's the sound of biodiversity. It starts with all these diverse plants that make a bunch of different ecosystems, and that creates a bunch of life. I think this place is still missing one thing pretty important.
Oh yeah, this is the kind of biodiversity I'm talking about. What kind of jungle is this?
This ain't no jungle, Tarzan. Just about anyone can grow something like this with just a little gardening savvy.
Oh yeah, this is the Green Bay Botanical Garden. I bet there's experts here we can learn how to grow biodiversity here. Come on, let's go. Excuse me. So this place is cool and all with all its biodiversity, but it's a botanical garden. How can someone like me plant something like this?
You know, these plants really don't need a whole lot. They need a place in the soil to grow, a little bit of water, air, and sunlight, and they're happy. So you don't need to be a botanical garden or have a horticulture degree to be able to have this in your own yard.
Seems like a lot of work. I think I'd rather just, chill or play computer games. What's in it for me?
There is work in the garden, but the benefits are so amazing. Just imagine picking off that ripe red tomato and biting into it and the delicious juiciness of it because you've grown it in your own backyard. Well, with a garden, not only are you growing some of your own food, you're also helping the planet. You're creating this awesome ecosystem for all of the animals and plants that are living in the world around us. So it's not only what's in it for you, but it's also what's in it for the world.
Why is it important to plant such a variety of species?
Well, think about it. If you have just your grassy yard, you have one plant out there. Not all animals that eat plants can eat that grassy yard. So by planting multiple plants of varieties, whether they're flowers, fruits, vegetables, you're helping feed the entire world. Well, let me ask you this. Are you going to be happier sitting inside by your computer screen or outside in the real world, where the plants are taking that carbon dioxide in the air and turning it into food for everybody, and then in turn giving you oxygen to breathe.
Making food from CO2? I don't really get it.
So the cool thing is, those plants, they're using the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and then they're respiring, they're giving off oxygen for us to breathe. It's this cool symbiotic relationship that we have with plants.
Now that takes some serious biomagic.
It is some pretty cool magic. So those plants, they're sucking up water through the roots from the ground. Then the leaves are grabbing the carbon dioxide from the air. And then inside those leaves, the reason they're green, they have these cool chloroplasts filled with chlorophyll. And that's where they're grabbing energy from the sun. They're taking that carbon, putting it with the hydrogen and the oxygen, and creating carbohydrates.
Carbohydrates? I think that's what makes up all of our food. Cool. Photosynthesis creates nature's lunchbox. You know, if you really think about it, it creates the basis to all food webs. After all that, I'm really ready to start gardening.
But keep in mind, we're still beginners.
That's all right. Keep it simple and just remember to plant natives for biodiversity.
Why is it important to plant native species?
The native plants are going to be tougher, so they won't need as much water or fertilizer. The insects and the animal life that are here already know them, they're familiar with them, so they'll come to them for pollen, nectar, seeds, fruits. Whatever those plants produce, the animals here will already know it and love it.
There's about 1,000 native plants. What species are we talking about?
There's plenty for you to be able to choose from. Purple coneflowers are beautiful and the butterflies love them. Black-eyed Susans, wild quinine, hyssop, all have beautiful flowers throughout the year and the animals here will love them. Remember that you need to plant more than just flowers. It's also important to plant host plants that the caterpillars are going to eat and turn into butterflies, which will help to pollinate and visit your flowers.
Can't wait to start planting some native species for pollinators.
No, let's plant radishes and tomatoes.
Don't you want to feed nature?
Don't you want to feed humans?
I want to make the planet better.
And I want to make the planet better.
Well, we'll see who's right.
Well, you can plant for pollinators and for people. You can increase the biodiversity, and there's food for everybody, so you're both right.
Both right. That's what I thought. Who would have thought something as fun and simple as gardening could have such an impact on our backyard?
Yeah, just think of the difference it could make if our whole neighborhood planted gardens.
Or even better yet, the whole city planted gardens.
Or country.
So if you believe in making our backyard ecosystems and the entire planet healthier, give gardening a try.
Hey, you might get a green thumb out of it.
Wait, is mine turning green? What? Not sure how to get started? That's easy.
Visit Green Bay Botanical Garden, where you can get ideas and tons of inspiration.
Then you can begin planning your own garden with a blend of biodiversity and sustainability for your yard and life.
For free ideas and resources for creating your garden, visit gbbg.org and intotheoutdoors.org.
The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.